You're going to start.
Oh no, I can pre-program all the files to do that.
We are now being recorded, but not streamed. So this is just for later use. Wink, wink.
Yeah, it's a.
Cool. Alright, so while we're waiting
I used to do that in
Bob...
I'd go back and look up NPC names that
Red's laggy.
Yeah, he is a bit. Alright, while we're waiting on Nob, I thought maybe we could go over some of the main mechanics and stuff just to make sure we're all sort of on the same page with how I think they work, and then we can kind of hash out any discrepancies, and then chuck Nob into these as we go. So pretty much go through how skill checks work, how obligation works, destiny, how the skill and talents work, and then through the generics of character creation, and then I have half a dozen pages of some ideas for how the story kicks off. Obviously, it all depends upon your actions, of course. But I have like an overarching sort of main plot that may or may not be followed by you guys. Up to you. So, we'll see how we go with that.
I think it's our job to completely screw with everything you have planned, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure Freezer's just planning to fly everybody straight into the sun, but that's neither here nor there.
Single
hence why I'm
session.
going as a B. Yeah, hence why I'm going as a B1 battle droid. They're quite recyclable, so therefore I can just go for another one.
Or just jump out into vacuum, and then if, like, Red and Nova go with the lungless Gand, they can also jump out into vacuum. And...
Yeah, I can jump out and go into compact mode. I can go into compact mode.
I took lungs simply so I could get extra plus 10 XP.
Fair enough. Well, like I said, we're going to run through full character creation, so you may or may not change various bits and pieces, just as we go through sort of my interpretations of various bits and pieces. Alright, so the way dice rolls work, from memory, and I may be wrong here, it's on page 18 of the source book that it starts, for those playing along at home.
Yep.
It is along the lines of, you got difficulty is determined by myself as the GM, which is based on sort of how difficult the checks are. You've got anywhere between simple all the way up to formidable and daunting tasks. That determines the number of difficulty dice that get added on that make things harder. The amount of good dice that you guys get is determined by the relevant stats that you guys have. So, from what I can gather, your skill check dice pool is created by your relevant overarching characteristic, which is like your main stat for that, determines how many dice you get of the green type. And then if you have training and various skills that are relevant to the situation, you may then upgrade some of those to yellow dice, which are better, up to the maximum of your relevant skill. So say you had 4 for characteristic and 2 skill points in that relevant field, you would get 4 green dice, which 2 would be changed to yellow.
If the second number is higher, you do it the other way around?
You do it the other way around if it's
So more points in the
so say you had 3 skill and only 2
skill than you do in the attribute.
So if you had 3 in the skill and 2 in the attribute, you'd have 3 green dice, of which 2 are upgraded to yellow.
Yeah.
Okay, so the green dice have basically 2 different types of icon on them. They could either have nothing, or they could have a success, which looks like... Where's my camera? That one is a success.
Little starburst.
Little starburst. Mm-hmm. Or they could have an advantage on them, which is that one there. Now these icons will appear as part of the Roll20 thing, so it's all good. Successes obviously count as a successful thing. You only need 1 success to pass. Any additional successes do not necessarily impact upon how well you succeed. In some cases they might, depending on particular talents or skills. The advantages, however, they provide additional benefits of varying kinds. The more of them you have, the better usually. Those things are counted out by your difficulty die, which contain failures. Those things directly negate any success. So 1 failure will cancel out 1 success. They also have threats on them, which directly counter the advantages. With similar things, like if you have a number of threats remaining at the end that are not counted by advantages, they can stack up to provide various different negative consequences to your... So you can succeed, but have bad things happen as part of that success, or some kind of mitigation to it. So it's very
And they're done completely separately, so does a threat have nothing to do with a success?
Or the threat doesn't necessarily counter the success. So the only thing that
I
counts
can
as a
provide
success
an
is a failure.
example.
But you could have things like, for example,
Like,
you are trying to shoot, say, a lock on a door, and you might get a success and a threat, so you might succeed, but then it opens a different door or something, or creates a small explosion or something. So you succeed at what you were trying to do, but there might be some negative consequence to that. Depending on how many threats you get, could depend on the severity of that. With your advantages and threats, if it's in combat, they can be carried over to other players or other NPC turns and used to provide boost die for their rolls. So boost die are these lovely blue ones. They've got blank sides, they've got successes on them, they've got advantages on them, and they have a couple of sides where they have more than one icon as well. Those things are basically used if we determine that there is some sort of reason for you to have an advantage in a role that is not necessarily covered by your relevant characteristic or skill. So it might be that someone is assisting you, or that you have prepared yourself for this particular action by like aiming previously, or just some sort of advantage that you can negotiate with me for why you should have a boost die. Some skills, some talents give you those as part of their talent, so make sure that you're paying attention to those to let me know what's going on with those. To counter the boost die, setback die, which are basically the same thing but for threats and failures. So these are these black ones, and those are used by me basically to add additional difficulty to these things that isn't directly related to the difficulty of the task. So something might be a relatively straightforward task, so it might only be 1 or 2 difficulty die. But if you're doing it under duress, so maybe there's a group of stormtroopers shooting at you, then I'm going to put some setback die in there to make it harder to achieve that without modifying the actual difficulty of the task.
Right.
So the task difficulty is determined at the start of it, and that determines how many of the purple bad dice there are. Your green and yellow dice are determined at the start as well. I add black die if I think there's something that is making it harder for you to do your job than normal. You will add blue boost die if you think there is something that is providing you a benefit. There is a red die, which is a bad one. That's an upgrade to the normal difficulty ones. They apparently don't get used very often, but sometimes come into play with certain types of difficulty things where it just gets upgraded for whatever reason. They have...
That's an oh fuck Darth Vader's here die.
Yeah, pretty much. So they're the counter to
it's
your
also
yellow
GM
upgrades.
doesn't want us to win die, is
Yeah,
what that is as well.
Now, there are 2 unique symbols. One is only on
That also... That,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that also comes into play if you're doing an opposed skill check against a skilled opponent.
Yes, it can come into opposed skill checks, which we'll get to in a bit. Yeah, there are 2 unique symbols. One is on one of the face of the yellow upgrade die, which has quite a lot of faces. I don't know exactly how many. 12? It's a
12.
D12, I think. Yeah.
12-sided,
So
that's
one of
12-sided.
the D12 has this icon on it. Where is it? That one. Which is called a triumph. Now, that one counts as both a success and a very, very powerful advantage. So it can be countered out by a failure, but only the success part of it. It also provides its big advantage as a separate component of it. So if it's cancelled out by a failure, it can still activate its good things. So they might be special rules that you've got as part of your skills and talents, or as part of your gear, or it might be just other significant advantages that you can use as a result of that at your discretion / my discretion. To counter that, there is also a despair, I think it's called, icon.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
On the
Yeah,
red
despair.
die, which is a direct counter to the triumph, in the sense that it provides the same things but in a negative direction. So it counts as a failure as well as a severely big threat. If you get a triumph and a despair in the same die roll, I think both of them just activate. So the success failure parts will cancel each other out, but the big advantage and the big disadvantage will both come into play, is how we're going to play that one. So we get to have happy, fun times. I have seen a suggestion where if a die roll comes out completely blank, like no net positive or negative of any kind, which is inherently boring because nothing happens. I've seen a couple of suggestions for, say, re-rolling those, but if it's now a success, you add a little bit of strain or something like that. We'll figure that out if it ever happens, to try and make things a little bit more interesting. So your dice pool come up through your character sheets in the Roll20, so when we create the character sheets and we give you those, you'll modify your dice pool in there for any particular action, click your button, and things will come up. So your And go to that. If I bring up my dice pool, I'm going to add one of each die into the dice pool and roll it. Which then looks like that. So it shows you the different coloured die and the symbol that was rolled on each of those things. It then tallies up any positive or negative things and cancels them out as you go. So the 2 successes, one of which was counted by one of the failures. So there is a net 1 success. The 2 advantage on the yellow die were counted out by the threats on the purple and the red die. So that would be a net success with no advantage or threat. Okay? So it'll automatically tally those things up for us and tell you the end result, and we use those to determine the outcomes of the die rolls. Okay? We all happy with how that works?
Yep.
Excellent.
How do we create our pool in Roll20?
Alright, so when you get your
character
sheets, which I will make in a minute, along the top of
Cracks.
the character sheet... Yeah, should we do that now? Or?
White die.
Yeah,
White die.
I'm getting to the white die. Yeah, there'll be a section at the top which has your dice pool, and then you can press up and down or type in a number that determines the type of each die that you've got, and then you click the roll button in the middle of it, and it'll just roll them all at once.
Okay.
Alternatively, I can roll my dice pool as well if people need me to roll for them.
Pretty sure it also saves you time as well, where you just click on your skill and it will roll on that, and then you got your difficulty dice on the corner. So you don't have to worry about counting your dice in terms of what your skills you have. Yeah. It's just putting in the die that Crack says is the difficulty, and that's pretty much all we need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Or if there's any boosts that you need to add in there, I'll tell you to add those in as well.
Yeah, so the amount of bookkeeping is going to be pretty minimal thanks to these character sheets. So
yeah,
that's good.
It's looking pretty good. Now, the last type of die, which I have not yet mentioned, which Red has, is the white die. This is a pretty one. This is the die that is used to enable the use of force powers. So anytime,
that's why he mentions it.
Anytime anyone wants to use force powers of any description, they'll need to roll a number of white die related to their various abilities and talents. There are white circles and black circles on them. Now, this is a special die in which it doesn't have anything to counter it. So successes and failures counter each other. The white and black circles on the force die do not. They both go to a combined force point pool, which is then used by the person wanting to use their force powers in certain ways, depending on how the force powers work. So you might get, say, 3 white and 2 black circles, and that makes a total of 5 points that are available to use. 3 white, 2 black that get used. I can't remember exactly how, but we'll get to that when people start using force powers. Red.
In my character plan, I have taken the force specialization, but I don't have any powers, so I'm
so you've got the ability to, but when you start leveling up, you'll start taking some powers.
Yeah. Once I start getting
Padawan.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea would then be to have them force sensitive, but not necessarily trained in any of their skills.
Yeah.
Just starting to become fledgling. People can become force sensitive throughout the campaign, so be aware that if you do want to take force sensitivity later on, it is possible. Except for droids. Droids cannot use the force, unfortunately.
We got our own cool stuff that comes with it.
Yeah.
We don't need the force. We got firepower.
Alright, so matching to... We'll do Destiny before we do Obligation. Now, there is what's called a Destiny pool, which, if you want to look at in the manual, is on page 315. It is a shared pool of points that is shared by both yourselves as the players and myself as the GM. It represents various forces beyond the normal sort of sphere of influence, so things that happen because of fate or chance. You can willingly spend these things at any point in time to create effects that are influenced by other things. So it might be that you decide you need a particular piece of gear, and you went, oh, luckily we bought that thing earlier, and you spend a destiny point to make sure that you actually have it. So it might be like rebreathers in a toxic atmosphere or something. So you can do things like that. You can do them to adjust... I'm not sure if you can adjust dice rolls with them, but you can use them to influence various different aspects of the campaign narratively.
Well, you can use your destiny points to like upgrade or downgrade.
Yeah, so you can upgrade and downgrade various points in the check before it happens. I don't know if you can influence a check after it occurs.
You can upgrade a green into a yellow.
Yep.
The GM can upgrade a purple into a red.
Yep.
Some powers use them, and you can use luck to introduce facts. It doesn't say you can use them to reroll.
No, you
Okay,
can't.
cool.
Yeah, it's not really used to like influence after the roll's done. You have to preempt it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that's
Yeah.
how that works.
Alright.
But you can do other things like Deus Ex Machina stuff as well at the cost of one.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, the trick with the Destiny points is they come in two flavors. They come in a light side flavor and a dark side flavor. You guys are allowed to use the light side flavor. I am allowed to use the dark side flavor. As soon as you use one of those points, it converts from light to dark or dark to light. So if I use one of them in order to, say, change one of the purple dies to a red one, suddenly that becomes available for your use after the action that involves the actual change. So I can't say flip it, and then you guys immediately flip it back during the same check.
yeah.
It's-
One key
it's done
thing to
after.
note.
Yep.
Yeah, one key thing to note. It's shared among all of us. The light side Destiny points.
Yeah, so it's shared amongst all players. And
Yeah,
we-
so it's basically the party's points. So if you choose to use it,
it basically...
don't be too
Make
selfish
sure it's
about
for
it.
everybody's
Yeah,
gang,
so-
not just your.
Don't,
Yeah, because you...
yeah,
there
don't
is a
use
limited
don't use
number.
the
There is a
yeah,
limited
don't use
number
the
of
last
total
one
things.
to re-roll a hamburger or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
So,
I was going to be using like force pushes just to like bring me drinks.
so yeah, so with the Destiny points, obviously, if you guys use them more frequently, then I also get to use them more frequently. Or I could just decide not to use them, and therefore deny you guys from having them. Or you could wait till I've used some and decide not to use them, stockpile them to prevent me from being able to do things in future, while also giving you the option. So it's a bit of an interesting mechanic in that it allows us to heavily influence certain narrative things, but in a very controlled fashion. And it does mention that ultimately I do get final say in whether something is acceptable or not with the use of a Destiny point. Like if I think it's way too far-fetched, I will call it as such. So I am more than happy for you guys to go nuts, go crazy, do fun things, but I will be keeping it sort of relatively consistent with Star Wars universe overall. So droids don't get force powers. You can't just make things out of nothing like I did in Apocalypse World with the grenade. That sort of stuff. Not
I
quite.
know not to do this because Force doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
I am a droid. It does not interest me at all.
No, that was just a
A
convenient
good
example of
gun, on
things
the
that
other
were
hand,
inconsistent,
yes,
so.
but not force powers. Force powers mean nothing to me. That's just used by like fleshy beasts that are made of 70% of water.
So you're saying that like hokey weapons and ancient religions are no match for a good blaster? Is that basically what you're saying?
That is exactly what's going to go on, and I'm going to try and work like various different like phrases and
Yeah,
things.
Red,
from the
you
shows
forgot the
into
one
campaign,
thing,
so.
statesman.
I do believe we're going to get a knob in a sec, so that's good.
Yeah, he's joined the chat.
You still there, Freezy?
I'm here.
Cool. Alright, so that's your Destiny, basically. So very powerful, but in other ways limited. Gone through the skill checks. So there's just obligation and then skills and talents leading into character creation. So obligations on page 307 for anyone wanting to have a look at that. The idea being that
It's
you...
like
you get various obligations that your individual characters have for various narrative background reasons. So it might be that you owe money, or it might be that you're owe favors, or it could be that you've got a particular addiction, or various different things like that. There is a big table of those that you can use to generate them, or you can choose your own. I'm going to allow that as part of character creation. So if you find a particular one is appropriate to your background for your character, or will make for an interesting gameplay style, I will allow those various different obligations to be chosen rather than generated. If you have no particular interest in any of them, we'll just roll, I think it's a D100 to determine what your starting obligation is. For the number of players that we've got, we have 10 obligation per person is the starting amount. So 5 people, 50 obligation as a group. The obligation numbers determine various different things. So you have your own individual obligation that determines narratively what you're trying to achieve or trying to be beholden to as part of the game. Each of those have individual numbers that you can work down through various different mechanics or narratively through the game, which is a good thing and can be a rewarded experience for. There are various things that you can do to increase your obligation as well. So you might take on an additional debt or things like that. Not only is there individual obligation, your total obligation number gets added together to form the group obligation. The group obligation number determines various different things narratively. There is a table on page 308 that discusses for the overall group obligation number whether different types of reputable or disreputable people are more likely to interact with you in certain ways. So you'll find that
Cracks,
if you have
I think that's the GM chapter on obligation. Our obligation is on page 38.
I'm well aware of that because that tells you how you choose it.
Yeah.
I'm just going through sort of how obligation is managed from my perspective to give you a bit of an idea of sort of roughly how it works.
Cool.
So the idea is that you've got various thresholds. As you get through those thresholds, people are more or less likely to interact with you in certain ways, depending on whether they are reputable or disreputable people. If your obligation gets too high as a group, so typically over 100, I think, it is bad. You also have various different aspects of your obligation. Like at the start of every session, we do an obligation roll that determines whether or not your obligations come into play. So if it rolls, I think, above your group obligation number, then someone's obligation comes into play, and I can either select whose or roll the dice to determine whose obligation comes into play, depending on how I want to run that or if it's part of the narrative. So those can cause some various narrative things to occur. So if you owe money, someone might come to collect, that sort of thing. You can take additional obligation as part of your character creation, so that can give you some additional benefits, so you can get some extra XP or some extra credits to spend on gear at the start. So that is something you may want to consider. Just be aware that if all of you start selecting additional obligation, bad things could happen for your group. It is more likely that obligations come into play as part of each session, and therefore more likely that bad things can happen. Now, when an obligation comes into play, so at the start of a session, if I roll and someone's obligation gets triggered, everybody in the group immediately takes 2 strain, with the person whose obligation gets triggered taking 4 strain, I think it is. If I roll a double, then all of those numbers get doubled. So you could potentially start off with some very bad strain consequences right off the bat if you have an overall high obligation as a group. There will be opportunities for you to reduce your obligation as we go through the game, so keep an eye out for those. Take actions that are consistent with reducing your obligation. You can be rewarded for doing that by net reductions in obligation, possible experience bonuses or credit bonuses, depending on the type of actions that you take. You there, Nob? Is Nob there? Do we have
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
Yay.
we can.
Hooray.
Alright, at the moment, just so you're aware, we are recording all of this, but not currently streaming. So we will have this recorded for posterity for later on. Alright, we're all in the Roll20. We should all be able to see that long time ago in a galaxy far, far away thing.
Yep.
Mhm.
Cool. Alright, we will start making character sheets in a sec. Page 103 and page 128 are the skills and talents, respectively. When you're creating your characters and spending your experience, you are instructed that there are a certain number of skills that you get for free at the start, and then you can spend experience to invest further in certain skills, with some restrictions on what you can do as part of your character creation. The skills are the main things that you'll be using to determine your various different checks. So on page 103 is a big list of all the different skills, their governing characteristic, and the general type of skill they are as well. Going through the pages after that gives you more descriptions on each of those things, such as how advantages or threats might be used corresponding to the checks involved with those, or additional sort of law-based rules for those things. So anytime that I think you need to do a check, I'll use your relevant skill that applies to those things, and you use that for your skill checks. So it might be if you guys are deciding you're going to fly off to another star system, I'll say, well, someone needs to make an astrogation check, probably the pilot, to determine whether or not you succeed in navigating to the correct place. Or it could be that if you fail it, it might take you longer to input the coordinates into the navicomputer, which could be bad if you've got an Imperial blockade coming down on you. Yeah, so you've got all those different types of skills. You get to choose some of those for free as part of your character creation. The talents come under your different professions. Those ones are a bit more powerful than just your skills, so they don't determine your dice pool. They determine various actions that you get to take additional to your normal abilities. They come under your different professions, so each of you will need to choose a career profession and then a specialization of that career profession. You may take additional ones by spending experience as part of your character creation, so you might decide you want to be a bounty hunter as well as a pilot. Who knows? That will cost you XP to do so, but then it lets you choose talents from both of those trees instead. The talents can do things like give you additional dice in your dice pools. It might give you different actions that you can take. They're all very cool stuff. There we go, Red just having fun with the dice because he's bored.
No, I was actually just seeing if the 3D dice worked.
Fair enough.
They don't. So
They don't?
turn them back off.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh my god, there is a talent called Utini I've just discovered. So there you go, Nob. You get to. I'm gonna give you a free rank in Utini as part of being a Jawa.
That is actually part of the
Yeah, I did.
rules for that book.
Brilliant.
Oh, so it's legit.
Yeah, it's legit. Utini is legit. What did it do again? I just saw it then, and I forgot to read it properly. But
I think it's something like you have a high chance of scavenging something good.
here we go. So it's part of the outlaw tech. The character removes setback die equal to the character's ranks in Utini from checks made to find or scavenge items or gear. So they could include negotiation, perception, or other checks depending on circumstances and the GM's direction. Such skill checks take half their normal time, which does not decrease with additional ranks of Utini. So basically, if you're scavenging stuff or trying to buy scavenged stuff, it makes it easier for you to do that, which is hilarious. I love it.
That's great.
Okay, so as part of the character creation, there are various steps to each of those. We will I'll let you guys sort of have fun, start creating your characters individually, and then we'll kind of bring bits together, because I think looking through your talent trees and stuff is going to take a little bit of time, and if we do it one at a time, it will take far too long to do.
Talents. Yeah, I'm not doing that yet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my character's basically done if you want to use that as an example.
Yeah, I mean, we can go through that roughly. The generation steps as listed in the source book. You determine your character concept and background. I think most of you have got a reasonable idea of sort of what background your character is now. Determine a starting obligation. As I said before, Nob, you wouldn't have heard this. You're more than welcome to choose your own obligation from the obligation table on page 39. Or if you do not want to choose or can't choose, you can roll a d100 to determine your particular obligation. Then it's got your species, your career, your specialization. Investing the experience points that you have. Now the amount of experience you start off with is determined by your race that you choose. So some have a slight extra amount. I think droids in particular have a huge extra amount. They've got 190 instead of the 175 instead of the typical.
Yeah, and it's
100.
still barely enough to actually get good stats.
Which is what I'm going to explain to you as part of your character creation, is a little bit different from everybody else's.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you invest your experience points according to the various different rules. You determine your derived attributes and your starting motivations, choosing gear, and we choose a ship. Now, the ships that they give you to start off with, I didn't like, so I have chosen a ship for you. It is an upgrade on those starting ships, but I will specify a few things about it. Just in terms of spending your experience and credits, you start off with the amount of experience that's listed in your race's selection. You start off with those various different attributes. When you're spending your experience, you can spend them on increasing the characteristics. So that's your brawn, agility, intellect, cunning, willpower, and prescience, or presence rather. You may not raise those above 5 at any point during the game, unless you have a talent that lets you do so. Character creation is the only time that you can spend experience points to raise a characteristic above its starting value. So keep that in mind, that your starting experience might be useful to invest in characteristics rather than just talents. You get your starting profession and specialization for free. To purchase talents along a talent tree, the cost is listed for each of the talents. So typically your top tier ones are 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 going down. You can only purchase a talent if it is in the top row or it is connected to an already purchased talent by a line in the talent tree. So fairly standard stuff for sort of talent trees. With the cost being listed there accordingly. Red is for active talents and blue is for passive talents. you guys will need to keep track of those because I'm not going to be able to for all of you. So if you have a particular talent that comes into play for anything, just let me know straight away and what it does. In terms of purchasing skills, where were the skill costs for each of those? You do get a certain number of starting skills. I will create those character sheets for you in just a sec. No.
They're 5 times the rank cost. So if it's like rank 2, it's 10. If it's rank 3, it's 15.
That is if it is a... Oh, you can purchase like talents outside of your talent tree, but they cost extra. Where oh no, skills. For your talent tree, it's got listed along the top career skills. Those career skills cost you the 5 experience per skill rank. I don't think you can raise any skill above 2 during character creation.
That's correct.
And if you are purchasing skills from outside of your career skills, they cost 10 times the rank. So if you're trying to purchase rank 2 in something, and it's outside your career, it will cost you 20 XP to do so. Okay, where are we?
Isn't it? Yeah, I don't think that's... Isn't it 5 XP per rank?
No, it's,
I thought it was extra 5, so it was 5, 10, 15 becomes 10, 15, 20.
Yeah.
I thought.
So, so Red, it's not like 5 for every single rank. It's like 5 for rank.
That's correct.
10 for rank 2, 15 for rank 3, and so on. So it's 5 times the actual rank number. So if you wanted to go from rank 0 to rank 2, it would cost you 15 in total if it was a career skill.
Yeah.
I will just double check that. I have lost which page that is on, but yeah, so you can purchase your skills like that. You can purchase your talents as part of that. Where is it?
It's in about page 100 and... Hang on, I'm looking at a different rulebook, so that's not,
I
not
found
true.
the skills section, but I can't read.
Skill training. Training a skill. For example, training a career skill from rank 0 to rank 1 requires 5.
Which page is that on?
Non-career skills, it's 5 times the rank. Yeah, it's the same, except you add an extra 5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah,
so
you
page
add
92 is where you've got all your different spending experience things. So, increasing a characteristic is 10 times the purchased rating in experience. Each rating must be purchased sequentially. You may not increase any characteristic above 5 during character creation. So if you wanted to go from rank 2 to rank 3 of a characteristic, it would cost you 30 XP to do so. To go from 3 to 4 would cost you another 40 XP. So to go from, say, 2 to 4 would cost you 70 XP in total. So it's expensive, but this is the only time you can increase characteristics if you would like to do so.
For me, it would be 80.
Yeah.
Starting from 1.
You can purchase ranks and skills 5 times the purchased rank in experience. So if you're purchasing rank 2, then it would be 10, etc. Each rank in a non-career skill costs an additional 5 XP. You may not purchase any skills above rank 2 during character creation. You can purchase talents within your specialization, depending on the position of the talent tree, as we said before. There are no special limits to those, so you can purchase as much as you want as long as you've got the XP to do so. You can also purchase new specializations, so like a new career, for example. It's 10 times the number of purchased specializations, including your new one, in order to purchase that. So if you have your free one to start off with, you want to purchase another specialization, it would cost you 20 XP because it's 10 times your 2 specializations that you have at the end of it. You could purchase a third one for an additional 30 XP, which then lets you take talents from each of those different talent trees. Cool. We don't need to determine attributes or motivations just yet. Starting gear, if you wanted to start looking through that, each person starts off with a budget of 500 credits that they may spend on various types of gear, remembering that there is encumbrance ratings on these things that is determined by, I think, your brawn determines how much encumbrance you can have.
It's 5 plus brawn.
Yeah. Alright, now, in terms of your starting skills, because everybody gets some skills for free.
And I get more.
From memory, it's 4 career skills, and 2 from the bonus career skills that you get for free 1 rank of as part of your character creation. Just double checking that. Yeah, you automatically gain 1 rank in each of 4 of your career skills, as well as 1 rank into each of your specialization skills for free at the start of your character creation that you don't need to spend experience on. So that's kind of cool.
Oh,
Those are
sweet.
listed along the top of your talent tree. So for example, if you went the Bounty Hunter Assassin, you could choose a single rank in 4 of the following: Athletics, Brawl, Perception, Piloting, Planetary, Piloting Space, Ranged Heavy, Streetwise, or Vigilance. 4 of those things you would get 1 free rank in. You can't stack up the ranks, you have to take 4 separate things out of that list. You would also get a free rank in either Melee, Ranged Heavy, Skullduggery, or Stealth as part of the bonus career skills. So potentially for that one you could take Ranged Heavy from your career skills and Ranged Heavy from your bonus career skills and have 2 free ranks in Ranged Heavy to start off with, because they're under separate lists of things. Now for Techie, with droids, instead of getting 4 and 2, it's 6 and 3, I believe.
Yep, that's right.
Now, in order for the droid to be a bit more functional, I read some people saying that the idea for droids would be to make them more specialist rather than generalists. So that whole 1s that you start off with doesn't really make a lot of sense if you're trying to be like a jack of all trades. So what you want to be doing with your experience investing is to pick a sort of a group role and invest more points into that. Now, in terms of your 6 and 3 free skills that you get, I'm going to allow you to stack those in any way that you want. So you might take multiple ranks of the same skill, as long as it doesn't exceed 2 from a particular thing. So
only one of those I could actually do for that, then that'd be Piloting Planetary. I could put that on 2 if I wanted, but everything else is like to be 1. So I'd have 1 in a lot of things.
Yeah, but the potential would be then, if Piloting Planetary was in both your career skill and your bonus career skills, you could potentially get that up to 4 to start off with, by taking 2 from each of career and bonus career. So it allows you to stack those up quite a lot early on, so you can specialize very early, and then either try and flesh yourself out a bit later on, or focus down that specialization. So with your 6 and 3 that you get to choose, you are allowed to choose any combination of those things without having to choose 6 different skills. Because otherwise it spreads your skills out across a lot of different things and doesn't really make you a specialist of any kind. It just makes you more of a specialist.
Alright, I'll do Piloting Planetary 2 then. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll get rid of Gunnery. I can add that in later if I want to.
Yeah. So with the may not purchase any skill above 2 during character creation, you can use your free ranks to get above 2 depending upon your selections, but you cannot put more than 2 of your skill points into a single skill from each of your selections. So for
I'm not really doing that. It's alright.
For your career skills, you can only put 2 into a single thing, but you can split those up however you want. And for your bonus career ones, you can put an additional 2 into anything, so you could potentially get to 4 if you've got something in both lists. But then you can't purchase beyond that with your experience. So you might want to keep some of your starting characteristics quite low, if they're not ones that particularly match with your chosen.
They all the ones that I've chosen to put up do almost all affect my skills except for 1, I think.
Fair enough.
And that's one I'm actually buying, like a skill I'm actually buying.
Yep. Fair enough. Also be aware, everybody, that for your chosen race there is a whole bunch of different special abilities that they have. So for example, droids are inorganic, they use repair patches instead of stim packs. They can't take force ratings by any means and cannot be affected by force powers that are mind altering. They don't need to eat, sleep, breathe unaffected by toxins or poisons. You have an implant cap of 6 instead of your brawn rating, etc. So just make sure you read through these special rules for those and make any choices that you need to, or take any additional skills. So some of the races give you an additional point of particular skills to start off with, but again, you cannot increase those beyond 2 as part of your character creation, except if you're taking a droid.
And the species skills don't become career skills, so they're still
No,
more
they do not.
expensive to
Correct.
rank
Yes,
up.
unless they're
Okay.
already one of your career skills.
Yeah.
So, hang on, Cracks, just because I haven't found that line, I hadn't realised the thing. Does a racial skill stack with career skill? Like, if I have a racial skill and a career skill, it's the same thing. Can I rank it to 2 without paying XP?
Yes, you most certainly can. So, for example, with the Gans, they begin the game with 1 rank in Discipline. If you take a rank in Discipline as part of your career skills, you could get to rank 2 without having to spend any experience, but you may not raise it above rank 2 as part of character.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Turns
so you
out,
potentially have 2 points in Discipline without having to spend any XP on it.
Yeah, it's not one of my career skills, but it means I can free up some XP in other things.
Yeah, exactly. So once you have decided upon your particular skills and talents and spent your XP, we'll go into your spending of money to buy your starting gear. Now, in terms of the obligation that we mentioned before, so I will take this opportunity to say that you can take on additional obligation as part of your character creation in order to gain some additional abilities while creating your character. Remembering, and I think, Nob, you weren't here for this bit, that your group obligation, the higher that gets as a group, the worse off it is for you guys, because you can start taking strain from the start of the game, and your particular obligations may come into play. At my discretion, and I'm going to allow it a little bit, I don't want you guys to go crazy, you can take additional obligation for additional benefits while creating a character. So this is on page number 40. You can take 5 additional obligation to have 5 additional starting XP, or 10 obligation for 10 starting XP. You can take 5 obligation for an additional 1,000 starting credits, or 10 obligation for 2,500 starting credits. Remembering that each of you starts on 10 obligations, so that puts the group at 50 already. Beyond 100 is guaranteed obligations coming into play every single session. So if you all took 10 additional obligation, you'd be starting on a group obligation of 100, which is not good for you guys. It's fine for me, not good for you guys. So it's up to you whether you want to take additional obligation during character creation. I'd suggest that might be something you would like to discuss with each other before people start unilaterally taking obligation and screwing over the rest of the group. So if you intend to take additional obligation for more experience or credits, throw it out there, let everybody know that's your intention, and you can sort of banter back and forth about whether or not that is a good idea. I'm going to allow, if you want to take additional starting credits, you can obviously trade gear with each other as part of the normal sort of play. So you might decide that you want to take 2,500 starting credits and then buy some gear that maybe you are not going to use for yourself but might share amongst each other. So that way you can spread a little bit of that obligation around without hitting that 100. But again, that's up to you guys. Okay, so I am going to attempt to create your character sheets now. Red's already got his and has started editing it, I believe.
Yep.
Alright, so let's add a character. I'm hoping I'm going to do this right. Weslem Orza say. Ooh, it's given a kind of funky name to start off with. Alright, can be edited by... Let's go. Techie can have this one.
I really should give myself a name.
Yeah, well you can change that as
the
part of it,
display
so... Add another
I'll go with that. There we go.
And let's go with... Nova can have that one.
I'm removing some of the skill bumps I'd given myself because I'm not going to take extra obligation.
Yeah. Nob
Yeah.
can have that
See,
one.
in my pre-planning before I really understood how obligation worked, I did sort of take some for some extra credits and bought myself some extra gear. But if I can definitely spread that around if need be.
And plus, because I have starting talents, I can now take that force power I was talking about.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, so if you do decide you want to use things from other source books than the core one, just make sure that you have access to those, or you can provide access to those for people that wish to be able to view that, so we can check the rules. So say, for example, talents that aren't in the core book, or races that aren't there, just make sure that we can access those to make it a bit easier for everybody.
So for everyone's reference, I'm taking the Force-sensitive Emergent, which is in the Age of Rebellion core book. It's just a different Jedi one, and I'll put a picture of it up in the chat.
Now, how is that different from the ones that are on offer in this one? I'm assuming it's more of a narrative thing for the ones that are kind of learning about their Force powers themselves, or...
Yeah, basically, my character knows he's got something. He knows he's got some sort of Force sensitivity, which lends him a degree of precognition.
Right, so basically he's Force sensitive, doesn't realise it's necessarily the Force, but is able to somehow tap into it. I mean, I'm assuming if you're going a Gand Findsman, that it becomes part of their sort of ritualism, and he doesn't quite realise that he's got Force sensitivity.
Yeah, like he sort of always had this preternatural sense to find his prey because he is precognitive.
Right. Now, is that an additional specialisation from like a career one, or is that your career specialisation?
That is an additional. My career is a survivalist, and then I paid 20 XP to get a second career.
Yep.
The second specialisation, which is Force Emergent.
Yep.
And then I've paid 10 XP to get the 4C powers, but I've taken no other Force-related abilities so far.
Yeah, fair enough. You're also welcome to, of course, use any of the Force power trees that are in the core rulebook as well. Obviously, you have to spend XP as you go in order to get those. So you're just using a different specialization talent tree. Cool.
Yeah.
And you've got the 4C power, is it?
Yes, which is the one I just shared up.
Yep. Cool beans. I'm assuming later on then you'll probably look to go for either sense or influence or something, maybe.
Probably sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not particularly charismatic given he's a fucking giant ammonia-breathing bug, but...
Yeah. Influence does allow for things beyond just sort of mind trick, though, because it gives you some things like forcing opposed discipline checks in combat, for example. So,
yeah.
Or you can influence emotions and stuff, so it's kind of cool. But
I think having taken 2 specializations off the bat, I think I will probably spend my first couple of XP advances on
definitely
on skills.
Yeah.
Because I did bump up my cunning and my brawn just for because I thought that fit the character.
Yeah, fair enough.
One thing I would just recommend most people do with their gear is probably buy a backpack for 50 credits, because that bumps up your encumbrance by 4. So it effectively becomes your, what is it, brawn plus 10 or something, so plus 9.
Mm-hmm. They don't give you much to start with. You can't even buy like a decent blaster rifle.
No, and that's the idea behind taking more obligation to purchase certain things. Now, once you have sorted out your skills and talents, before you start purchasing gear, I will give you guys a couple of freebies as starting things that are more quality of life things than anything of particular use. But just that way you're not going to be spending credits on things that narratively make sense for you to already have as part of just your starting stuff. There are lists of the costs of various different items, starting from page number 147. Lets you start having a look at the sorts of things you can buy. There are costs associated with each of those. There is a rarity associated with each item as well, which basically only comes into play when you're trying to purchase them later on. So to determine whether or not these things are particularly available in various areas or not. And I can modify the rarities depending on where you are. So things might be easily purchased on Tatooine that are not easily purchased on Coruscant or something like that. I would suggest
they
you
have a-
probably all should purchase yourselves a weapon of some kind, just in case. So,
Yeah, I got one. It's a real basic one, but I got one.
yeah. And now, Techie, as part of any gear that you purchase, you can either have it as like a normal piece of gear, or you can decide you want to integrate that into your chassis somehow. So, for
Considering the kind of model I am, it's pretty much going to be like just a handheld one.
yeah, but I mean, like, it could be, for example, you might decide that you have a blaster that is a part of your arm in a concealed compartment, or it might be.
Yeah, if it's a light weapon, I will do that. But
yeah, or you
I've
might
got
decide
a
you want
large
to purchase more armor at some point, and you might have that as actual armor plating on your chassis, so it's not something that can be easily removed, that sort of thing. So just be aware of that. For various different things, you might want to have them as physically part of you, so you don't drop them or lose them or whatever.
Where do we get the character sheets in Roll20?
If you go along the tabs on the top right, there should be the little chat one, a one that's pictures, maybe that might be just me. There's a one that looks like a little newspaper, which has journal when you hover over it.
Yep.
Mine's still
Click that, you
pink.
should have one listed in there for you that I've made access.
I'll
I
have
do
to-
not.
You do
I'll
not.
refresh it. Hang on, I might refresh mine.
I also do not.
I'm just going to refresh, see if that helps it.
Does
Surely-
anybody have access to theirs yet, or apart from Red?
No, mine's still invisible.
Have you given them? Hang on. If you let me, I'll just rejoin as GM.
I think I did give them to the relevant players, but
Yeah, there is a bit of
aha.
it's a bit fiddly.
Right, so that was
So, asset cell. If you
Yeah,
keep talking,
asset cell
Crux, I can give this to people.
Asset cell should be can be edited and controlled by. I've put Jesse C in the.
You need to put it in players' journals as well. So-
Okay, right. So I need to just
So,
do the same journal.
Nob, you should see yours now.
Well, I'll do the Srebo Viobrigi one.
I do.
Is for Freeze.
Nova, you should see one now.
So Freeze should be able to
Yep.
see his as well.
And I'll get the last one.
Okay.
Techie.
Done.
Done.
Alright, so you should all be able to see a.
Yes.
Yep. Okay,
Get rid of
excellent.
that and get rid of the class.
So when you go into
Okay.
the character sheet, obviously you just make adjustments to the various different things. There is a dice pool section at the very top, where you can adjust the numbers for your dice pool, and then there's a little D20 icon just underneath the force die thing in the middle, which lets you then actually roll the die. I will control the destiny pool from my dice pool thing, which you will then sync pool with the GM at various points as you use those things. Yep, so put in your character names, your species, your credits and XP that you've got available to you, your careers and specializations, etc. If you take additional ones, you can add those. Basic descriptions of your characters, notable features and others, and then we'll do like a go around and describe your character to everybody else type thing as well. Discuss if you want to have pre-existing relationships with other characters. The basic premise to start off with, without going into the actual starting encounter, is that you have all been working together on a light freighter ship. You start off smuggling some goods for the huts, so you're delivering those to the huts. You have been working together for at least a few jobs. Whether or not you knew each other before that, or you want to become permanent parts of the crew that have been there for ages, or just new additions, that's up to you guys to sort out. I think Freeze decided he wanted to be the pilot, I believe, yes?
Yes.
And also the captain of the ship.
But
Unless someone wants to take over duties as captain, or are you
Honestly,
gonna have, like a
with
consensus
the character
thing?
I'm planning, that would be a terrible idea. Although hilarious.
Freeze, you'll also need to, with yours, change the name of the character sheet, I think, somehow as well, to match your character's thing. And I think, I think the
if
only
you hit
person-
edit,
yeah, I think,
and also if you can name them on the
Yeah,
actual sheet as well.
cool.
By the way, if anyone's looking for talents, they're actually in the combat thing, which is weird because most of mine are like skilled.
Well, 100% of my starting XP can go into characteristics.
I
if
wouldn't
I
necessarily
get one,
chuck
if I get
all of it into characteristics. I'd say maybe leave a little bit so that you can buy maybe 1 or 2 talents. So, like, which specialization did you go again? You went...
bodyguard.
Yeah, that's the one. So it might be worth taking like 1 or 2 of the starting talents for only like 5 XP each.
Alright, I might do that then instead
like,
of
obviously I'm not in control of what you're creating, but it's just some of those are particularly powerful to start off with. So
yeah, it's okay.
like there's one that gets you +2 wound threshold straight off the bat.
Yeah, I might get that actually.
That should not be rolling like that.
Alright, so
Defensive stance sounds pretty cool as well.
yeah, it's like really expensive though.
No, not the first point of it. It's only 5
Oh yeah.
along the top.
But yeah, basically, I've only done 2 of my stats, and I've only got 15 XP left. Because I've actually maxed out 1 characteristic to 5.
Which one? I'm gonna guess brawn.
Agility.
Interesting. Remember, if you want, you can take some obligation to gain some additional XP if everybody's okay with it. It's like 10 obligation for 10 XP could get you a couple of talents to start off with or something, so...
I seriously considered it, but I don't think I need it.
Okay, so toughened.
And now, if anybody wants me to roll for their obligation because they don't want to create it for themselves, let me know, we can roll those. There are some quite comical looking ones in there. But I think a few of you have already chosen what type of obligation that you want. Like, I think Freeze went with addiction. Nova, you went with blackmail, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, just a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
With, like, when we're putting it on the character sheets in Roll20, can everybody else see that?
Only you can see your own character sheet, but, I mean, I can as well, obviously.
Yeah. So we can put all the details in there without revealing what our obligation is to everybody else if we want to keep it a secret.
Like, when you're looking at the character tab, you should only be able to see your character, yes?
That's right, yeah. I can only see mine.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think if Red logs in as his sort of GM thing, then he will be able to see them as well, but I doubt he'll do that. I
won't do that.
All of yours as you're editing them.
Okay.
If I log into this thing as a GM, it'll only be to do some technical thing that Cracks doesn't know how to do.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, it's fair enough.
Alright, so I got toughen, barrage, and grit. They're my 3 talents I'm starting with.
Fair enough.
So barrage is going to be kind of useless until I get a new weapon, though. That's unfortunate.
What? Oh, okay, right.
Because
Melee
barrage is
and
only
brawl are different
long and
skills.
strength.
Right.
Yes, melee and
What's
brawl. Yeah, be aware of that, guys. Melee and brawl are 2 different skills.
Yeah, I'm aware of this.
What's a hard point to something?
A hardpoint is something that allows you to attach modifications to it. So in terms of personal gear, it might be something that allows you to put like an underslung grenade launcher onto something or a scope onto something. If it's a weapon, or if it's armor, it might allow you to put on modifications. Like for a helmet, it might allow you to put night vision goggles on or something.
Okay, so each armor has a
in terms of
certain
spaceships,
amount
they
of,
have hard points as well, which allow you to add modifications to your spaceship.
Okay, so each armor has a set amount of modifications you can make to it, basically.
Yeah, certainly. You can upgrade modifications as well. They take a certain type of skill check to do so, which is related to engineering-y sort of skills. Which skill?
Oh yeah, I'm just looking at the Tinkerer ability for Outlaw Tech, which lets me add 1 hard to any.
Your mechanics
item.
skill allows you to make modifications to upgrades, which allow them to perform better while still only using the same number of hard points as well. So if you have a high mechanics thing, then you can modify gear quite
Well, I
nicely.
certainly do.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm trying to work out how to add my 2 skills here, and they're a bit weird. Expert tracker.
So to upgrade your characteristic is 10 times the purchase rating. So if I wanted to put something, say, to 3, it costs 300.
Wait, 30.
Oh yeah, 30. Sorry.
Yeah, so if your current characteristic is 2 and you want to send it to 3, it would cost you 30 experience to do so. Then if you wanted to send it to 4, it would cost you an additional 40. So every time you go up in skill, you have to pay for each step along the way rather than as like a skill.
Yeah, you can't just go straight to 50.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like my intellect starts at 2, but I'm increasing it 2 points. That's 70 of my experience points scored at the start.
In addition, you cannot raise any characteristic above 5 as part of character creation.
Yep. So you get 100 XP. I'm going off my character thing.
Depends on what race you have selected. So I'm assuming if that Celestin one says 100 XP, then you start with 100 XP.
Yep. And 500 credits.
Yep.
Yep.
Kind of like the career specializations people are choosing. This is nice.
Force powers. Add. Foresee.
Yeah, I'm thinking if I want to do like maxing out Brawn for like probably my next droid if this one fails. See how we go.
Alright, now for those people that are at the point where they want to start looking at which gear they're purchasing, I can give you a couple of freebies depending on your particular race and specialization. So if you want to know what freebies you're getting, let me know.
Yes, please.
Alright.
Yes, please.
Okay, so for the 2 Gand characters, I was thinking of letting you take a free translator of some kind. So either an attachment that you can place on your person that then allows you to translate into basic, or no, actually we'll go just like a body-mounted translator of some kind rather than a droid. Because I don't think an additional droid is going to serve either of your characters well narratively.
No, to Gand or speak basic?
No, Gand cannot speak basic.
Really?
Yeah, well they don't have the mechanical parts to speak basic. They can understand it, but they cannot speak it, so you need a translator of some kind, whether as a translator device or a droid. So I'm going to let you take a translator device of some kind for free.
Okay.
Because that kind of makes things a bit awkward if you have to spend some of your credits on one of those for something that is really a quality of life thing at this point. I mean, you could get a droid to translate, such as Techie, but it seems overly onerous.
Translate?
Yeah.
What's the black dice?
Alright, so the black die is a setback. So those are things that make things more difficult to achieve without adjusting the difficulty of the actual task or encounter. So say it might be too difficulty to fix your hyperdrive or something. That is fixed. If there are additional circumstances causing it to become harder to do than normal, then setback dice are used to influence that difficulty. So it might be that you are currently in the middle of a dogfight in space, and that makes it harder to fix your hyperdrive. So rather than increasing the difficulty with the additional purple dice, the difficulty with the purple dice stays the same. I would add setback dice in as the GM that makes it more challenging for you to complete that particular objective. They're kind of like the narrative opposite to the boost die, which is through various different things. So it might be preparation, or it might be skills or talents, or just sheer luck. You might have additional chance of succeeding from the boost die. So your setback die are the opposite of that, so additional chances of failing.
Also, just so everyone knows, I have a Batman utility belt.
Nice.
So if we run into space sharks, I have the shark repellent.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Alright, anybody else that's looking for their freebie item, if they're up to item purchasing, let me know. Actually, Nob, I might as well tell you what you get right now. you get a translator of some kind also. Because nobody really speaks Jawa, and Jawas don't really speak Basic very well. Your translator is not going to be just a standard translator, though. It's going to be a... You know the training...
British accent.
No.
British accent.
Yeah, well,
British
that's
accent.
You know the little training probe droid that Luke used for lightsaber training on the Millennium Falcon? and A New Hope?
Yes.
You get one of those, except it's a translator instead of a training probe. So it's a little floating orb that follows you around and translates for you.
Cool. That's kind of what I wanted. So.
Don't let it get shot.
Yeah, that could be hilarious.
Well, I can repair it, but no one will be able to understand me until I repair
Well,
it.
Techie can, because he's a droid and he gets sort of free language
6
understanding.
million forms of
Yeah,
communication.
binary. Nah, just binary. Like, I don't translate. I shoot things.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you could potentially translate for Nob, but then that also allows for you to change what he's saying,
I
guess.
translate. Yeah, I could just act like I'm translating as well. He just says, like, he says you look like a dork.
Alright, for Freeze, if you're trying to practice rolling, you need to go into your character sheet.
No.
Oh, you're just doing your obligation roll, are you?
No, motivation.
Oh, motivation. Yeah, so you guys
Which
want
is
to the
apparently
motivation roll
greed.
point as well.
Yes.
Oh, that works so well for you.
Perfectly.
Greed and addiction, perfect.
Yeah, I've picked my obligation.
Yeah. So you can pick your obligation if you want to. It does not change the size of the obligation. So everybody starts out as obligation 10, unless you choose more obligation to get more stuff.
The other ones I don't think I have yet in terms of like picking them.
You may also choose your motivation, though. It might be an idea to roll for that one if you're choosing your obligation, just for shits and giggles. It's up to you. You can choose it if you want to.
Which one's the motivation?
Right, so on page 94 is the motivations. There are three types of motivations: ambition, cause, or relationship. And of those, there are additional specific motivations. So, for example, the ambition ones might be...
Basically, you roll a 1d10, then a roll a 1d100, and that tells you what you've got.
Yes, the 1d10 tells you the general type of motivation, and the d100 tells you the specific type. I love
I think considering like mine, I'd probably have to be like, where's the thing in terms of me? I'm actually trying to make it out that I'm the last addition to the crew.
So the most recent one.
And yeah, the most recent one, and the Jawa engineer of our group fixed me up, and so therefore I'm indebted to him for doing that.
Okay, so you'll probably want to take a relationship.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like which specific relationship do I use though? It doesn't seem to work. It's got droid companion, but that's the other way around.
Yeah, that's more for the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Perhaps either like a parent or a mentor one. Oh no, comrade could work. So showing loyalty to those he serves alongside. So that could be
that
the
can work.
particular person that he would... So you've got him as like your comrade there. He's the particular person you would like to try and...
No,
comrade one. I think of the ones under relationships, comrade is probably the one closest to the one you're looking for. Or perhaps mentor might be the other type.
It's probably going to be comrade because while I've lost all of my upgrades that I started with as like a character, I've got all my programming. So I'd say comrade would probably be more apt for this character.
Which is cool because Jesse could then decide he might want to take the motivation of droid companion in like sort of reciprocation of that. But
yeah, it actually would work quite well in terms of like a bodyguard's career path for bodyguarding a Jawa. That sounds like a pretty good bodyguard to have, especially something like a Jawa. So okay, let's do that then. Sounds good. Yeah, obligation I already picked out because it's sort of backstory.
Don't say out your obligation just yet necessarily.
Yeah,
I've
going to
gone in and had a look at it anyway.
Yeah, so you already know what I've got, and I've sort of put just details under it as well, so you got a bit of backstory there in terms of like how I ended up there.
Yeah. As part of your obligations, I would like you all to set the obligation value at 10 if you haven't already done so. and then provide a few details for it as well. So Freeze, I'd like to know what the specific thing is.
That's the magnitude, yeah?
Yeah, so the magnitude's set to 10, and then for yours, I'd like you to add a little bit under description of it for me, please. So, like, for your particular one, just what particular substance? Alright, Nob, have you given your character a name yet?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Oh, the free Rankin Otini was part of the race thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Because if you didn't have that, I was going to give you that. Alright, now, Techie, would you like your freebie before purchasing stuff?
Yes, please.
Alright, I'm going to have to...
Because I already had an idea of what to have, but, because, my encumbrance threshold is 7. I actually don't have much room in terms of,
I'm just gonna
the
try and
heavier
figure
gear
out
that I was looking
what
for.
particular item I think would suit you as a...
Because I need, basically, a heavy weapon that's long range, potentially, because otherwise Barrage is useless, and armor as well, I guess, would be minimum I would like.
Well, if you don't take particular type of armor, you basically have heavy clothes, or the equivalent thereof as a droid, which I think provides 1 soak in addition to your defense.
It's just 1 soak, if I remember correctly.
But I think you get basic soak from your various different characteristics as well. So.
Do I?
Yeah, as part of your characteristics, you've got sort of damage mitigation as part of that. So.
I think it's like soak values is my 1.
We'll get to that sort of stuff as part of combat, if and when we get to it. We're definitely getting to combat. Who am I kidding? I just want to know who's the first person that's going to shoot and why.
We're going to shoot Freeze to stop him flying us into the fucking sun.
You don't have to shoot him. You could, knock him out or something. Or
roll for initiative, and if he wins, he flies into the sun.
End of game. Reconvene in 2 weeks. No, you know what, though? I think if he ever actually succeeds in flying you into the sun, I'm going to make it a dream sequence.
Yeah, it's actually because of his addiction.
What have I got all these ranks in astrogation and agility and skilled jockey if I can't fly us into the sun?
but you're starting on Tatooine, so which sun would you aim for?
Hey,
Doesn't matter.
He's
I was
so out
going to
of
use
his
one of the
ball,
suns
yeah.
as a gravity sling to really hit the other one. Yeah, that shut you all up.
Yeah.
No, I was actually going to say, if it comes to it, I will set my slug thrower rifle to stun and just shoot you.
Alright. I'm just trying to find out a rough cost for the translator devices so I can make everybody's freebie roughly equivalent. Communications. No.
I find a gear table.
Yeah, I've got a gear table, but I can't find one that's particularly like a translator. We've got comm links and comm jammers and stuff.
It's probably something that a datapad does.
Yeah.
Why don't does it say
How much was the datapad where I've lost it? I had it a moment ago.
75.
75. We'll say to the cost of approximately 100. So.
Can I just make mine a datapad with a translator in it? Wouldn't that be easier?
You can if you would like to, or you can make it something that is sort of strapped onto your body somehow, so that you don't need to manipulate it, so that it can be used during combat, for example, or.
Okay. Isn't a datapad in Star Wars quite small?
They can be, or they can be the size of our tablets, or depends on the type of datapad, I guess. But you can use it
I think my guy would probably just.
You can use it as a datapad that will translate for you from your pocket or something. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Damn, my shooting's really good.
What's the difference between gunnery and ranged?
So gunnery is using mounted weapons as well as turrets and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's using something much bigger that you can't carry.
yeah, if you need to look at any of the particular skills, there is a section that details every single one of them.
Yeah, so you got like range. So you got like range light, which is like pistol, like your blaster pistol. Range heavy are like the big blaster rifles. Then gunnery is like a mounted one.
Yeah, so yeah,
or shooting from a
gunnery's for
ship.
anything
That works too.
Yeah, gunnery's for anything too large for you to carry. So it might be mounted weapons, vehicle-mounted weapons, or spaceship-mounted weapons.
Yeah,
which may be useful if you're the pilot, like trying to shoot off your spaceship's guns, but.
I got that as well, just in case.
Yeah. Whereas the ranged heavy is for like your heavy blaster rifles and stuff that you carry into combat. So basically,
the good stuff.
Any ranged weapon that is two-handed as opposed to one-handed for a common person.
Yep.
And if you have a look in the various different ranged weapons on page 160, it'll actually tell you which the governing skill is, whether it's a light, heavy, or gunnery.
Right. So where's the list of the gear I can get? What page is that on?
So it depends. Like, there's a huge section depending on what type of gear you want. Because you can basically buy anything that you could normally buy during the course of gameplay, up to 500 credits. If you're after ranged weapons and melee weapons, it's page 160 and 161. Descriptions following after that. It also includes explosives and other weapons in that table as well, though you can only sort of really afford frag grenades at this point. In terms of armor, if you're wanting to purchase additional types of armor, page 170 for anything more than just heavy clothing, which you start off with by default.
Yeah, that's the armor selection. It's very expensive.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Good reason. Red, did you want to stick with datapad, or did you want to do it more as a comlink for your translator?
Well, basically,
Basically a mobile phone.
But yeah, seriously, like I just want him to be able to talk and do it without having to fuck around with devices. But I figure if it's a data pad, that's something I'd probably away.
Yeah, I suppose because that also lets you record things and make notes or look things up if you need to. So we'll go with that. If you want to get various gear and equipment frees, it's page 182 and 183. Black market items, this might be of interest to you, is on page 185. Remembering that, so Techie still needs his freebie, and Freeze, you also need a freebie as well.
It's too expensive.
What is?
Yeah.
I've got 4,500 credits to buy a jetpack.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
gonna
like
give
you're
you
gonna
a
get
free
that
jetpack.
right at the start. Come on now.
I'm not giving you a free jetpack. Alright, Techie,
Hey,
I'm
Cracks,
thinking...
Cracks, can I have a shield generator as well? Like, be like as much like a droidy car as possible.
Hang on.
Cracks, can I have another ship that freezes on?
No. Shield generators, as far as I can recall, were more along the lines of modifications to existing gear. I think you can mod it onto.
Just a TAY advanced. I'm not picky.
It's high advanced. Fuck.
Holy shit, the cybernetics are expensive.
They really are, aren't they?
Yeah, that's where most of my money's gonna go in the end because I can have so many.
Yeah, I think shield generators, you can get sort of small personal ones as part of modifications to existing armor, but we're not going to give you one of those to start off with. What I will give you for free...
I'll learn it later, it's fine.
I will give you a free net launcher. We'll just treat it as bowler/net. But we'll...
Net launcher?
Yeah, so essentially just comes under bowler, net, under thrown weapons, but instead of you throwing it, you'll launch it out of an arm or some shit for narrative reasons. Yeah.
I'll have it shoot out of my shoulder, actually.
Yeah, sure, whatever. It is cheaper than the stuff I gave the others, but I think it is more than making up for that in terms of hilarity.
So it's got...
This is page 160, under thrown weapons, bowler, net. So it's range,
Yeah, so...
short range, damage 2. That's hilarious in itself. Yeah.
What's the encumbrance for this one? It says, is it 1/3? Is that what it means? Like 1/3
yes.
encumbrance?
So you will take
Okay.
3 nets for 1 encumbrance, essentially, and I'll give you 3 to start off with.
So 1 encumbrance total, which gives me 4 encumbrance left for another weapon if I choose.
Yeah, exactly, which you can spend your credits on at your discretion.
Okay,
yeah,
500 credits.
But that kind of ties into your specialization a little bit as well, so it allows you to capture instead of kill. And you start off with 3 of those, which may or may not need to be replaced as you use them. Alright, so that just leaves Freeze with his freebies. If you have updated your thingy like I asked you to do... Yes, thank you very much for choosing the one I wanted you to choose. Perfect.
So Freeze.
Oh, I can't use the slug thrower rifle. That's a shame.
I
So is
got
that
one.
a freebie for that item?
We're gonna go a freebie worth 10 of that item.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go with blaster pistol.
I do like it how you are an absolute cheapo when it comes to that stuff, though, Freeze.
How much spice has he just bought?
That's gonna be for him to describe when we start this thing off.
Okay,
The entire hold of the ship is just full of it.
Alright, so has anybody at this point taken additional obligation?
No.
No.
Okay, so I
have not.
100 credits left, so
Okay, well,
2
so
frag
at this point, no
grenades
one has
sounds good.
taken any additional obligation, so you have a group threshold of 50 at the moment, which is reasonable. If anybody would like to take additional obligation, do so now.
Can I take 5 more?
Can you what, sorry?
Can I take 5 more?
For gaining what? 5 more experience or the 1,000 credits?
I just want to push it up to 100.
Well, then take 10 instead of 5. Like, you're only on 50 at the moment.
Don't enable him.
Oh, you guys are going to have so much fun. I really
Why are we
hope
even on
that
this ship?
I hope obligations trigger fairly frequently, and I'm kind of tempted to just choose which obligations come up, because... funny. But no. I'll roll for obligations. If you want to take the 10 additional for the 2,500 credits, of course, remember you can buy gear for someone else and just like give it to them as part of the introductory stuff. Because 10 obligation for 2,500 is much, much better than 5 for 1,000. So
Critical 3.
That would let me buy a disruptor pistol.
Yeah, I'm going for a blaster pistol.
what? A
That's
disruptor? Jesus. Jesus, this is one vicious looking Soliston.
Do weapon mods cost something? I assume they do.
Yes, weapon mods do cost stuff. I will just quickly look up for you where the cost of them are. They do cost stuff, and there is rarity of them as well. So I'm not going to let you choose any extremely rare weapon mods to start off with. Let me just
What are the weapon mods?
where are we? Customization and modifications starts on page 187. The weapon needs to have hard points in order for you to put the mod onto it. And to install the mod, you need to spend 100 credits on the components and supplies, have a toolkit, and spend several hours at a workbench making a hard, which is 3 purple die, mechanics check.
Jesus.
If you are...
If we start off with one, could we just say... I mean, I'm an outlaw tech, so surely I've had my entire life to modify something.
If you want a weapon mod in your starting gear, you need to convince me of why you should have it and what type of mod it is. So,
A weapon slim because it's a fucking strap?
yeah, no.
Like, come on.
Gotta be more convincing. Nob, what were you gonna try and convince me that you should have?
I'm not sure I'm actually looking at all the mods right now.
Because, yeah, some of them do some very, very interesting things. So, for example, shortened barrel allows you to reduce the difficulty of checks made to conceal the weapon by 1, so it makes it a bit easier to hide the weapon. It reduces the range by 1 band to a minimum of short range. If it's already short, it adds a setback die to the attack checks.
Is that a force pike in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah, exactly. If you're able to modify your shortened barrel, it could give you the innate talent of quick draw. So there are some very interesting options available to those things. To actually modify and upgrade your mods, where's it say for that?
How the hell is a survivalist bounty hunter not have stealth as a career skill? That's quite strange.
What was that, sorry?
Oh, I would have thought like a survivalist, which is basically a hunter, would automatically have stealth as a career skill.
Surely there's
But you can take stealth as a non-career skill. It just costs 5 extra XP.
Yeah.
How do you know what mod can go on what weapon? Surely
basically, as long as it makes sense to be able to put that particular type of mod on that particular type of weapon.
I know I'm putting a serrated edge on my slug thrower rifle.
Like, yeah, not clever, but if you want to suggest why a particular mod should go on a certain weapon, I'll hear it and adjudicate. But like, what are you trying to put on what, or what would you like on?
Just looking at everything. But yeah.
Okay. Like an underbarrel grenade launcher on a holdout blaster, probably not good.
Like, how the fuck did you hide that in your boot?
But there is also, for each of the mods, it does tell you the number of hard points required to be able to attach that to a weapon. So you can't attach like a mod that requires 2 hard points onto a weapon that only has a single hard point. It's like the underbarrel grenade launcher requires 2 hard points. So you can't put it on holdout blasters anyway.
So our starting thing was 10, right? Our starting obligation?
Your starting obligation was 10, so as it currently stands, the group obligation is at plus 50.
Okay, I think I'm set.
What does quick draw mod do?
The quick draw mod. I don't think. Was there an actual mod for quick draw? Which mod are you looking at?
Weapon sling.
Weapon sling. Base modifier decreases cumbersome rating by 1, so it doesn't actually give you quick draw at this point. So when you attach a mod to a weapon, it only gives you the base modifier. In order to get the modification options, you then essentially need to modify it again. So yeah, it would just reduce the encumbrance by or the cumbersome rating by 1. If you then further modify it, it gives you the quick draw talent. So you'd have to skip back to the talent section and look up what quick draw does. I think it just lets you draw the weapon without having to spend a maneuver to do so. Where are we at? Q. Quick draw. Once per round on the character's turn, he may draw or holster an easily accessible weapon as an incidental, not as a maneuver. This talent also reduces the amount of time to draw or stow a weapon that usually requires more than 1 maneuver to properly prepare or stow by 1 maneuver. So, if you start combat, instead of having to spend a maneuver in order to draw your weapon, you would get to do that as just par for the course, if you had quick draw.
Yeah, I think I've got most of my stuff all set up. If you just want to check over it, Cracks.
Oh, hang on. Right, no, so I made a mistake before. When you're attaching things to weapons, it doesn't actually cost stuff. It's just as long as it's got the hard point to do it, you can attach it on there. It's the modification that requires the mechanics check and the 100 credits. Okay. So yeah, so if you just attach stuff on for whatever you want to do, you get the base modifier. To get the modification options for a mod, you need to spend 100 credits and do a hard mechanics check at a workbench. Yeah, so Nob, if you wanted to argue that you have a particular attachment that has already been modded, feel free to try and convince me that you should have that. And no, you cannot add a Death Star cannon to your blaster pistol. Freeze. I don't know how
this game is shit.
There, but alright, so Lock is reasonably complete, we think.
I think so.
Alright, so you got your wounds, your strain, your soak, encumbrance.
Yeah, I think I'm
Freeze.
pretty good to go. I'm just describing my duty if
Alright,
you want to
so
have a
you've
look.
got those spare credits, you got those things there.
Yeah, Freeze, he hasn't really noticed my remote control TIE fighter yet.
You're not getting a TIE fighter.
But how much was a blaster pistol? 350 credits?
Well, depends on what type of blaster you want.
400. Okay.
Because you could go for a holdout.
I think there's a
blaster.
holdout and then there's a smaller one.
Yeah, because holdouts are basically the ones you hide up your sleeve type thing. They're pretty. They're actually got almost the same stats as a light blaster pistol, except less range.
They don't have the range.
Yeah. For a standard blaster pistol, which would be like your DL40 or whatever.
And more for up close though.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the holdout again?
Holdout are 200 credits.
200.
Yep.
Okay. Wow.
And they do 5 damage, 4 crit, short range only though, and they do have a stun setting on them. Also, with a holdout pistol, if someone's trying to detect those on a person, you add a setback die to that character's perception check when trying to find it, so you can conceal that pretty well.
Weapon type, so that'd just be light for like a pistol, wouldn't it? Or is it main?
Yeah, so your blaster
Ranged
pistols are
light.
ranged light, yeah. Heavy blaster pistols are also apparently ranged light. Alright, looking through... Okay.
So when it says modifiers, that's the extra equipment or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, this is weird. You're always forgetting something. Where's your talents go in this? Oh, down here, right.
Oh yeah, haven't done that.
Yeah, so I got toughened. 1.
Red was the person I hadn't checked. Motivation.
Yeah. I'm still working on my motivations.
That's cool. And your obligation you chose, or did you roll for it?
I chose that.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense.
Right.
I've got some interesting ways to play some of these obligations and motivations into the story that I'm weaving.
Good. Glad we can help.
I think it was more that I didn't go very specific with my story at this point, so it leaves a lot open. And there are some nice little... Depending on, obviously, if you follow the breadcrumbs I'm leaving for you, there might be some amusing little cameos along the way.
Is there a way to track ammo or anything on these, or is that not something they have?
Generally, you don't need to worry about ammunition, as far as I'm aware, unless it's for... like, say, grenades or nets or things that require physical things, so like blasters, etc. I don't think you need to track ammunition for.
No, I mean for like thrown weapons and stuff, sort of thing.
That would just be if you go to your character sheet, under item inventory. I'm assuming that it'll be under tools potentially, or it might be under combat weapons, and then we can always just delete them as they get used up or something. Or we can make it so that you sort of automatically purchase more and it reduces your credit earnings in a particular session or something. We'll figure it out.
Can't add another motivation here.
Are you trying to go for 2 motivations, are you?
Oh, it does, yeah.
You should be able to add an additional motivation.
No, you can't do 3.
Oh, 3? Okay.
2 will be fine.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2 should be fine.
Yeah. You can have a look at them now if you'd like.
Yeah, I just noticed them there. Interesting.
What's the you get out of choosing 2?
Basically, the normal rules for choosing 2 is if when you make your dice roll to choose your motivation or obligation, if it gets like in the really high numbers, you might have to choose 2 instead of just 1. You can, if you want to, take an additional 1, but I'd say probably keep it at 1 unless you're really desperate for a second one. Of either.
No,
second, second obligation or second motivation?
Either.
Okay, I think I've got everything
Just
now
remember,
in it.
taking like a second obligation, I might decide is enough to warrant additional obligation score as well.
So I'm not too sure how we work with motivation. So
basically, motivation is not something that comes into the mechanics in any way, shape, or form. If
it's your
I
character,
have,
basically.
yeah, it's basically narrative stuff. And if I decide that at the end of a particular session you have taken actions that are consistent with your motivation, I may, at my discretion, award additional experience points for being consistent with that. So you might want to choose like a motivation that is along the lines of how you intend to play. Just because that might be more opportunities for additional experience or something.
So,
oh my god, I've just read Jesse's obligation, and oh yes.
Oh, God.
Jesse, have you fucked us?
No, he hasn't, but it is just so... It is brilliant. I like it. I really, really like it.
Yeah, I feel like it goes with my
it really, really does.
Career pretty well.
Yeah, and it goes along with various other choices that have been made so far. Yeah, I quite like it.
Have I done this right? I think I've added modifiers to add additional. Write the number of.
Also, remember if you're spending those starting credits to reduce your number of credits to how much you have spare at the start as well, rather than like chucking 500 down.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. I'm saving for a rifle.
Yeah.
I'm saving for something for like something heavier that can go for a longer
I
range sort of thing, you know.
I know what Nova's saving for. And
So Nova,
I may or may not make that available to you at some point.
I'm assuming that what we did is we probably left Gand together.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because, you know, it like not many Gans actually do leave the planet, but
it's mainly
the reason
you're a particular findsman, and it looks like Nova might be a findsman of a different persuasion, but still hunting for something in particular.
Yeah. The reason I left mine is basically I decided that the findsman clan that I was affiliated with were basically extremists. And that they were like actively harming the cause they but you can't just leave like that.
Yeah, I'm just going to make now that Rhett and I are working together, I'm just going to make some adjustments to my obligation.
Okay.
So let me
so not to the type, but to the narrative?
Just to the details of it. Yeah.
Like maybe
I'm just trying to figure out how to word it.
Maybe have him sort of assisting with the aftermath of it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think your motivations actually tie in quite nicely together as well. Just have a look at those.
Yeah, there we go. Done. Cool. Right.
Also, I'm assuming that my character has he doesn't do the I pronoun yet. He's not been certified, but he is. So
you've given his full name, but he's only going to use part of it, or
no? He will use his first name. He's done enough to that to be able to.
Okay, so.
Yeah,
so
I only have a surname at this point.
Alright, so Red, you're deciding that your character feels that he has done enough to warrant being able to use his first name, but not necessarily that the Gand as a whole have decided that he's warranted to use it, or...
No, I think he probably has. I think he's been around long enough and probably did enough as a findsman that he has legit earned it, but he hasn't earned the singular pronoun.
Yeah.
So he's not I, but he has enough notoriety that he can refer to himself as Zarton.
Yeah, fair enough. I like it. Okay, so I think most people are almost finished at this point.
Am I missing anything, Crux, you think?
I'll have a look in just a sec.
I just feel like I am missing something, but I'm just not sure what. Like maybe there's some stats I missed.
Yeah, no, I like those motivations. That's good.
That sounds better, actually.
Alright, hang on. Alright, techie. So, where are we at? Let's go character info. Alright. Gender.
Just put in what?
Okay, see one of those. Okay.
The right kind of obligation, by the way.
See, why is
yeah.
my initiative working and none of my other skills are?
I am going to end up manipulating that as part of some story to change it slightly from what you think it is at the moment.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
Like, as in
that's just how he remembers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's how my droid remembers it. So, given the ordeal he went through, I think you can safely say that maybe my memory was damaged as well.
Not even so much that, but I think I'm going to have that particular group be more than they appeared to be, potentially.
Okay, sure. Sounds good.
Alright, so you've taken that. One of those. Alright, so obviously heavy clothes aren't narratively appropriate feature. I mean, they could be. You could have your droid walking around in clothes like Magma Guard style, but
I can always change it later on. No, that's just what I start with. That's what the Jawa gave me.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you just chuck that in there more for the +1 soak than for the narrative purposes. Unless you actually want him to be walking around in clothes, like I'm cool with that.
It's more just for now until I find something better to put on him.
Yeah. Excellent.
Just remember, I got found in junk heap. I didn't have anything on me, so therefore I just took what I could get.
What was soak again? That was equal to your brawn, right?
I think it's... it might be equal to your brawn depending on certain types of attack.
Yeah, this is where I got confused though, because it's like...
it's also affected by your armor as well, so let me just go back to the combat section.
Yeah, but I think its base is the same as your brawn without... if you have no armor.
Yeah, which is weird, which means that like droids don't have any more soak than a fleshling would, which is kind of weird. I mean, is that right?
Well, you saw how easily the droids got shot up in...
Here we go. Yeah, most creatures and characters have a default soak value equal to their brawn rating. Different sources of soak will stack, such as armor will stack with your current soak. So all of you start with default heavy clothes, which provide 1 soak, in addition to your brawn rating. If you have purchased additional types of armor or other things that provide soak, obviously that is going to affect that as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got it, also just a quick question: if you've got an encumbrance of 1/3, how does that supposed to be?
Such as the net, for example. I'm assuming you would take 3 of them to equate to 1 encumbrance.
Right.
So, like with Techie, because I gave him nets, I gave him 3 to start off with for 1 encumbrance.
Now the question with the nets is, can you retrieve them?
I'm going to say it will depend entirely upon the situation in which they're used. If it's you have used them to, say, capture somebody and you've recovered this person and taken them to your ship, then you get your net back afterwards. If you have used it on somebody and have fled from the combat, then you're not getting your net back.
Nice.
And where does the encumbrance threshold come from?
It's 5 plus your brawn.
Yeah. So the higher your brawn.
And if you buy a backpack, you can have another 4.
Yep, and that was.
Oh, really? Okay, so I got to remember to get that too, because then I can start carrying more weapons on me.
It's only 50 credits, so.
Something I can go towards later, because I spent the last of my credits on frag grenades.
Sorry, what was the encumbrance?
Encumbrance
5 plus your brawn.
5 plus brawn. As Nova said, you can purchase a backpack at 50 credits
I did buy one,
in order to give yourself 4 extra encumbrance.
It's been
That's
10
backpacks. They're easy to find.
So threshold. It's been my threshold, right?
Yeah, I think if you hit your encumbrance threshold, you're fine. It's only if you go over your encumbrance threshold that things start to happen.
Yeah, it's...
So it doesn't auto-generate your encumbrance, you just figure it out.
Nope.
Yeah.
And it's just set it out.
Yeah, so basically, once you're carrying enough stuff to hit your encumbrance threshold and beyond, I think you start taking strain for each point above. As like normally, it's like you can't function carrying more than you should, but under temporary circumstances, you can go above your encumbrance threshold at the cost of strain. So it might be you're running away from things and you've decided you want to pick up something to escape with it that takes you over your encumbrance threshold. Now, normally you wouldn't be able to just carry that around as everyday items, but you can pick it up and run away with it at the cost of strain because you're carrying some more than you should, basically.
The other question is, am I supposed to be doing something with this dice pool up here, or?
No, not particularly.
That's just for when you're rolling, so
Yeah,
it's more or less just adding the difficulty dice.
Okay, so if you want to do a custom one, not in the macro things, you can. That's how you do it up there.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, depending on
need to set it
what the
for,
difficulty that I set is, it's probably easier to adjust the difficulties and the green and yellows based on.
Yep.
You will need to, like it's more like Yeah,
considering I'm going to be adding boost and setback die to various different things, you're probably going to be using the custom dice pool at the top more than the individual ones from your items or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh man, my piloting planetary.
Oh my
awesome.
god, that picture freeze is... Yeah, so I didn't think we'd get to any of the narrative stuff really tonight, but after we've introduced our characters, I will describe to you your ship and the condition that it is in. Because rather than giving you a choice of your 3 starting ones, which were all pretty much garbage, I have selected a different ship for you, and we'll prescribe
Is that
a couple
something
things.
we need to fill out on the vehicle sheet?
I'd say possibly you could, as the pilot, might be an idea to do that, but otherwise the rest of them not really. Actually, who's still working on their character sheet?
I'm kind of going through it still.
Alright, well, while you're still going through that, I might as well describe the spaceship that you guys have. So that everyone can get a feel for that. Alright. The starting options that it gave for you as the free ship were a fire spray patrol boat, which really for a group of 5 people is way too small, and for those that are not immediately familiar with it, that's the type of ship that Boba Fett uses.
Yeah, I can still see how 5 doesn't work in that.
No, it doesn't particularly work for the purposes of this group, either with the type of activities I suspect you'll be likely engaged in. Other options, there was something else that was just absolute garbage, and a Corellian YT 1300, so basically the Millennium Falcon. And while that light freighter is a quite nice ship, I thought it was a little bit too cliche.
Yep, I agree with this.
Yeah, a bit too cliche to be tooling around in a Millennium Falcon clone at the time period we're set at as well, because the time period that we're setting this at is shortly after the destruction of the Death Star, but before the rebels have been discovered on Hoth.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so immediately after destruction of the Death Star, but before the discovery of the rebel base on Hoth. What was the other options that it gave to you for your starting ship? It was something dodgy. It wasn't the Wayfarer, I don't think. Might have been the Wayfarer medium transport. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think it was. It was ugly, whatever it was.
Yeah, but ugly. Don't like it. So I have made a unilateral
we want to fly in
decision.
style, boys.
Yeah, I've decided to give you a reasonably sized ship that is reasonably stylish, costs a little bit extra than those starting ships. So, given that none of you have at this point taken additional obligation, I'm going to add... Oh, do I want to add 5 or 10 obligation for having this slightly nicer ship to start off with?
Make it 10.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll make it 10 because I've given you some items on that ship as well. Right. So you're currently on a group of 60, which it's reasonable, and you can work down that additional 10 as sort of how you go. Just note that working down your obligation, there is a minimum group obligation. I think it might be 5 or 10 that you cannot get below, even if your personal obligations are all at 0. So that can tie in quite nicely with the ship. The ship can be that obligation that never quite goes away. I've decided to give you another Corellian freighter. I'm going to give you the YT2400. So for anyone that played... what was it called?
So Shadows of the Empire?
Yeah, Shadows of the Empire. So it's basically Dash Rendar's ship from that. So...
Ooh!
it's on
I've seen
page
this before.
265, if you want a picture in the description. It's a quite nice ship. It's very slightly larger than the YT1300. Has a similar sort of design in that you've got the cockpit at the side of the ship. It is a light freighter, so you've got plenty of room for cargo. It has a passenger capacity of 6. I'm going to say you can go over that depending on circumstances for short periods of time. But there's 5 of you, so it works out quite nicely. It has a Class 2 primary hyperdrive, which is pretty decent, but not your fastest. It has a backup hyperdrive, so that's kind of handy, but that's only a Class 12, which is very, very slow. Plenty of consumables that you get by default in there, so you've got about 2 months worth of food, water, other equipment for surviving, basically. Encumbrance capacity of 140, so a little bit less than the YT1300, but still more than enough for anything you guys will be doing. It does say that you get 5 customization hardpoints. I am revoking that and only giving you 4. Because I am automatically installing for you a smuggling compartment.
Nice.
So the smuggling compartment can hold up to 25 encumbrance, which still counts towards that total encumbrance capacity, so it's not extra. It's in place of 25 normal encumbrance. But it gets +2 to all difficulty checks of anyone trying to find those compartments. So anything you put in those smuggling compartments is harder to find. So you get that for free. It's got a navicomputer in there with short-range sensors. In terms of flying it, it needs a pilot and possibly a co-pilot/engineer to make most of the things you can do. It does have dorsal and ventral turret-mounted twin medium laser cannons, so pretty much the same as the Millennium Falcon has, except these ones are linked, meaning that you get additional damage potentially in space combat. So if you hit something with it, you can use a linked shot to immediately hit again for 1 more damage, I think. Yeah, so think Millennium Falcon, but sleeker. And it does actually have better handling than the YT1300, slightly more armor, and as a result, more strain threshold as well. So yeah, quite a nice ship. There are various websites that have sort of interior layouts of those things if you wanted to have a look at how they are laid out. They do actually have 2 different sets of escape pods. So there's an escape pod from the main compartment and another escape pod right behind the cockpit, so that the pilot and co-pilot can escape out of their own special little escape pod if you need to do so. I was going to name your ship, but I think I'll let you guys name your ship. So start suggesting some names for your ship. Chuck them in the chat, perhaps, so that everybody can see it and comment and vote.
I don't think I'm allowed to name it.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
On the last one there'll be a...
No, chuck names forward because it's something that's going to be established before the narrative starts. So, oh my god, really, Red? My god, that Wayfarer is ugly as sin.
Oh, it's terrible.
I am glad I'm not getting
Is
that one. I had originally intended
the
to give
Wayfarer. Oh god.
Yeah, I'd originally intended to give you a YT-2400, and then I saw that there was actually like those 3 starting ships of all about 100,000 credits. And I thought, okay. But I don't like them, so you get the more expensive one, but you get the obligation to go with it. So, interesting names. The Errant Venture, really? Really? If you don't come up with something decent, I'm going to name it Hunter 2. I'm just going to do it. And then every time it comes up on transponders, it's just going to be asterisks. Okay. Alright, so I do like all of your character creations. They are pretty good. And without any sort of prompting or knowledge, you've actually tied them in together reasonably well as well.
That's good.
Ties together with the kind of setup I was going for. Do we have Freeze back yet? Is he back yet?
I am back.
You're back.
Yes, I have fulfilled the baby duties.
Cool.
The obligation.
Did you catch what type of ship you've got?
The YT-2400 from Shadows of the Empire.
So basically Dash Rendar's ship.
Yes.
You heard also that you got the smuggling compartments for free on there?
I did not, no.
Okay, you've only got 4 hard points to customize because I've used one of them up already to give you smuggling compartments.
Okay.
Which basically just adds 2 to the difficulty of any check to find those hidden compartments.
Right.
And can hold up to 25 encumbrance worth of gear in those. Yeah, so page 265 if you want the details on the actual ship. And you're currently trying to figure out a name for it, and yeah. If you can't come up with a name, I'm calling it the Hunter 2.
Not the Monday night. We've got that in Pathfinder already. No.
Roy Orbison. Jesus. My mama told me not to get a tattoo of Roy Orbison on my ass. What mama doesn't know doesn't hurt her.
What you do on your Saturday night is your own business, Trax.
That's how I got this thing. Evan Ryder. Tell you what, I think I'm gonna let, seeing as Freeze is the captain and the pilot, I'm gonna let him choose the name out of the ones that have been presented so far.
Oh no.
Or choose a new one of his own creation, I suppose. And no, you're not having the Roy Orbison. Roy Orbison does not exist in this universe. I even had to change the name of a character that I'd created because I realised the nickname I gave them doesn't actually make sense. Because that particular item that they were named after does not exist in the
Sunseeker!
The Sunseeker. Hey, whatever you want. No, not the Sun Crusher Red. You don't get established. Oh, by the way, as well, in terms of setting, so I've said already that it was after the destruction of the star, before Hoth. I'm going to take into account various aspects of the expanded universe that existed before The Force Awakens came along. So, species, planets,
please,
races,
never speak of that.
Stories, any of those things that existed before they became legends rather than canon, I'm going to treat as potentially canon for our playthrough. However, anything that occurs after the time that you are currently in terms of story, as long as it doesn't really conflict with the movies through to Return of the Jedi, I'm going to let you adjust anything you want. So it doesn't have to follow the expanded universe story in any way, so characters can be killed, unless they're ones that appear in the movies directly up to Return of the Jedi.
Okay. That kind of ties into my obligation quite well.
Yeah, so basically you can't kill Boba Fett. You can defeat him. Like, if he turns up, you can defeat him, that sort of thing. But narratively, you cannot kill him because he still has to turn up in Empire and Return of the Jedi. So that's that sort of thing.
Okay.
But anything outside of things that directly occur in the movies, I am willing to change on the fly to suit the narrative that we construct. Oh my god, not the blow drive.
So what happens when you give Freeze just naming
I was saying, you had to let Freeze pick, didn't you?
I've made a terrible mistake.
I will let Freeze pick of any of the things that he has not suggested.
Yeah, but no, probably not one of the ones that Red suggested either. Like, some of them are a bit.
Yeah, I think Red only really suggested ones that mostly already existed.
I've gone with the Sunseeker. It is official.
Alright, so the ship is called the Sunseeker.
That's ominous.
Yep, it kind of is, isn't it?
That's incredibly ominous.
Now,
This will not end well.
What page was the details for this one on?
This one was 205, I think I said.
265 for the ship. Yeah. Oh, so what was the part that you said was going to be cut back a bit to make way for something else?
I can't remember.
Like for the smugglers hold?
Oh, okay. So normally it starts off with 5 customization hardpoints. I'm only letting you have 4 because I've used one of them up in the smuggling compartment.
So 4, okay.
Smuggling compartments count as one of the mod hardpoints that you can add on there. So I've just basically given you one of those to start off with. But if you go a little bit further in the rules, all those starship and vehicle modifications can be attached on those hardpoints. So you can give yourself like additional armor or electronic countermeasures, or you can upgrade your hyperdrive. Basically, upgrading your hyperdrive doesn't really do much apart from making it take less time to get to places, which could be useful, depending on how the story goes. But you can maybe add higher output engines to give yourself more speed at sublight. Different shield generators, better weapons, that sort of thing. So, yeah. So Freeze, did you want to go Sunseeker or the Sunseeker?
The Sunseeker.
The Sunseeker. All right. Cool. Excellent.
So if we want to get shot, we want to get shot in the face or the butt.
Pretty much, because you don't have any armor, or you don't have any defense on your
Sides.
starboard sides. And did you note the fact that it has 2 escape pods, one in the main section and one behind the cockpit?
Trauma threshold.
I just assume Freeze would have already ejected him, so we can't escape when he flies into the sun.
They're full of drugs. Gotta save those drugs. System drain threshold 18.
Okay, so
Hyperdrive primary class 2, backup class 12. You have a backup hyperdrive? That would have changed the first movie somewhat.
Well, with the backup hyperdrive, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, that hyperdrive is so slow that it lets you use it, but it's going to take you months to get anywhere. There is a table that talks about hyperdrive speeds, I think a little bit earlier.
What's the hard points?
Hardpoints are the ones that let you add modifications to the ship.
Oh, right. Well,
so like cybernetic implants.
So I have used up one of your hardpoints already by adding.
Oh, there it is. 5. Yep.
Yep. So you've only actually got 4 left. here we go. So hyperspace travel times on page 247 lists the average duration for various distances travelled, which is travelling at a Class 1 hyperdrive speed. Class 2 is twice as long, Class 3 is thrice as long, so Class 12 would be 12 times as long. So within the same sector, a Class 12 hyperdrive would take you nearly 2 weeks, as opposed to just like a day or less. To travel across the galaxy could take anywhere up to like more than half a year on a Class 12, as opposed to a couple of weeks on your Class 1. So you do not want to be stuck on your Class 12 hyperdrive. Particularly because you can only have like 2 months worth of food and water and stuff on your ship. So it's like...
It's going to be the co-pilot.
If you're stuck on your Class 12, like you're wanting to stop somewhere.
Doesn't matter to me.
So I think I've got a few planetary piloting points. So I can be co-pilot if you want.
The way I think it works is that technically anybody can fill sort of co-pilot duties by taking actions or maneuvers.
It's asking me to put everyone's character names in and create the crew roles.
Oh, if you really want to, you can do that. Because when you look at the different types of maneuvers and actions that you can take in a spaceship, there are some that are pilot only and some that are not pilot only. So I'm assuming the co-pilot could potentially do pilot only maneuvers if the pilot is not. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Some ships have multiple pilots, in which case each can perform a pilot-only maneuver, and only the ship suffers strain. However, those ships are rare. So I'm assuming co-pilot can act as another pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, according to this too, you need to put characters on the weapons.
Yes, you will need to put characters on the weapons. Now, it is possible for pilots to also man the weapons, but I think there are advantages to having separate people manning the weapons, particularly considering that the weapons on the ship are actual turrets rather than just guns. So they're like them.
I can help with that.
In the sense that they're like people can go sit on the gun turrets and shoot them.
Yeah, I can help with that. It's not like I've got like 5 dice, one of them being yellow or anything.
I don't like what you're implying, Techie.
What? Not as good as my piloting planetary though, but yeah.
Our weapons are only close range though.
So you have to get us in pretty close then. If we're going to be like engaging, we have to be like.
We have to engage the Star Destroyers at point blank range.
Yes, you do. Alright, so it is starting to get late for you guys, I'm aware, so we will start wrapping it up. So you're aware of the ship that you've got, which is now called the Sunseeker, rather ominously, as a Corellian White 2400 light freighter, with the smuggling compartments. Alright, go through and introduce your characters for me, please. We'll start with Freeze.
I'm the pilot.
Yeah, so give us like race, specialization, motivation, obligation, and a little bit of backstory.
Right. I'm a Solison named Sign de Droge. He has a serious death-stick addiction.
I do like how it's death sticks, though, which are the cheapest forms of spice you can get in this.
Yeah, not by a little bit either. Like the next cheapest one is like 50, and death sticks are like 5.
It's cheap shit. But it does have the problem where when you consume it, it actually gives you setback die for every single thing that you do.
Yeah,
there's no benefit. Like some of the spice actually gives you benefit. Like I think it might have been glitter stem, perhaps, gives you like hallucinations that actually increase your perception rolls, and like can potentially give you like mental powers, depending on the GM. But no, death sticks are just.
But no, you had to be cheap.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
What was your motivation?
What if...
my motivation was greed.
Do we have any more specifics, or just general greed? Is there any particular types of items you're after, or...?
He's just not a very good person who just wants to get everything, a hold of everything, just so he can mostly get more eye.
Alright, so basically his greed is in the form of obtaining more things to fuel his death stick addiction.
Yeah, but just getting things. I'm going to play him as a bit of a klepto.
Cool. Fair enough. Bit of a klepto. Fantastic. Any other things you'd like to add, like any particular special gear that you've got, or special talents that you might have, or?
Not really. He's just actually, I think I've got him fairly high on sneak.
Right. Oh god.
And he's got pretty high on astrodation.
Right, which you'd want to hope for a pilot.
And space piloting.
Let's just hope you don't do it while high. Alright, cool.
But yeah, I haven't really specialised in much else besides that.
Do you have any particular relationships you'd like to establish with any of the other members of the crew, or are you just kind of there running the ship, doing your job?
I don't even know who the other member of the crew are, so...
No, but I mean, like, is that something you would like to establish as we learn who they are, or are you happy just being yourself, sort of thing?
Oh, I'm happy to establish something there somewhere if someone wants to do something.
Okay, alright, I think we'll go Red and Nova next. We'll go Nova first.
Okay, so my name is Eslok. I'm a Gand bounty hunter / assassin. So my obligation is blackmail. Do you want me to go into the details of that yet, Crax?
It's entirely up to you whether you think your character has shared these details with people. If you decided that certain characters do know and certain characters don't, it's up to you whether you want to discuss that sort of publicly so that players know but characters don't, or whether you want to keep that sort of secret for the moment.
I feel like it is something that he's not proud of, so he would probably keep it to himself.
Okay. If that involves any other players, which I do believe it does, you can discuss that with that player privately to give them a bit of a heads up of how that works.
Okay, yep, sure. But yeah, so I'm potentially being blackmailed by somebody at some point. Red and I have sort of worked together on a few jobs, as you know, being that we're both Gand. He's the findsman, I'm the guy that does the dirty work, basically. He finds the targets and I take them down. I'm fairly skilled up on like stealth at the moment. I'm basically saving for a rifle so that I can attack from long range. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. I've got a few like piloting points and things like that, but that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
Cool. What was your motivation?
Which one's that?
So you mentioned the obligation was blackmail. Your motivation was...
Oh, right, yeah. Motivation, was basically like non-human rights. So I'm really pissed at the Empire because I think that like all non-human species should be treated equally.
Cool. All right, Red, you're up. Do we have Red? Hello, Red. Stuart.
Red.
I'm here.
Hey.
Hey.
All right,
There he is.
Oh, it's gone again.
Yeah, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Hello.
Hello, we got you now.
Yeah, okay. His name's Zarton Chagurg, and he is he's a veteran findsman. So for those of you who don't know about the findsmen, they're like this sort of collection of, like, it's not just one sect. There are all these sort of weird sects of findsmen back on Gand, and various ones have different traditions. Zarton was part of a group called the Mist Cadre, where his role was basically to peer into the mists to discern knowledge about what the targets they were hunting. But over time, he grew disillusioned with the Mist Cadre. Basically, he decided that they were extremists and were perverting the sort of the findsman traditions. So he decided to get up and leave, basically. So that's his obligation. He is still duty bound to the Mist Cadre, and they do still have some hooks in him because you don't leave easily. but in terms of his motivation, he's basically trying to escape them, and he's also trying to sort of preserve the Findsman traditions. And as part of that, he's teamed up with Eslok as and as Nova said, he provides the Zarton's skill is basically to find the target, and then Eslok and him team up and take him out. But Eslok's the frontline guy. And yeah, as part of his growing awareness of like the techniques of the Finds and everything, he's got this sort of nascent connection to the Force that now he's away from the environments of Gand, he will explore more. Also, he's got lungs.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm lungless.
Cool. What about your causes?
So one of his causes is religion, which is his devotion to like the Findsman. But so he actually believes in that basically as a religion. In the hunt, even though he disagrees with the methodology in this cadre, and his other motivation is his ambition for freedom because he's trying to get out from under their thumb.
Cool. I do like that your eyes are described as bubble wrap.
That is literally what they were in the original thing. They're bubble wrap behind a lens. And yeah, so
particular skills or weapons or items that you've got that might be of interest to everybody else, or not particularly.
He's a very back to basics scan, so he uses a slug thrower, like a rifle, basically.
Nice.
Because he's old and he's pretty grizzled, so he's sort of, old in Gand's terms, he's like 48. He's got a lot of, he's got various skills. A lot of them are related to perception and tracking, so he's actually quite a skilled tracker, and he's also used to being out in the wilderness tracking prey, so that gives him skills with survival and vigilance and brawling as well.
Cool.
So yeah.
Cool. All right.
Oh, and for what it's worth, he's done part of his genuine, so he is entitled to Zarton, his first name. So he is entitled to use his full name, which is Zarton Chakyurg, whereas Nova's Gand isn't.
So
I'm not quite as well accepted by the Gand Council, so I only have
accomplished enough to have a name rather than just Gand, but
Yes.
only your family name essentially at this point rather than your individual name.
Correct.
All right, so I think next up we'll go with Nob.
Oh, right. Well, my character doesn't really have a name because he never really needed a name, so people kind of referred to him as the Shadow Mech. Due to some complications that happened, he kind of had to fled his previous career. He is outlaw technician, so good at repairing things. His main skills are sort of in working with computers and mechanics and things like that. He's also dealt in some shady deals, so he's pretty good at like streetwise and things like that, and like the underworld and things like that. What else?
He's a Jawa, for those that had forgotten.
Yes. He is a Jawa, of course.
It's so much Utini.
All the Utini.
Yep. Ambitions are...
yeah, I was going to say, do your motivations before you do the obligations, because I like the obligation.
Motivations. He's got a pet or childhood friend, which is his small companion droid, which acts as his translator, but it's basically the first droid he ever built or found and repaired.
Does that droid have a name?
Attached to that? Not really.
So just droid.
He just doesn't quite see the point in having names, to be honest.
Fair enough.
Because he doesn't really like people, to be honest.
Cool. And your other motivation was?
Oh, is ambition. So he is a bit of a mad scientist. He wants to modify everything and make everything work much more out of the parameters it should work in. So
it's not meta, it's just outside the parameters.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
yeah.
Cool.
And his obligation...
No. Stop. I will get you to say that one after we've done techie.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're going to
shit.
save that.
Alrighty.
Because
This will be good.
I kind of want to make your obligation knob tie into techie. Rather than just a generic
it
thing.
could... Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, because
Alright.
yeah, we can work that in, particularly with the whole Techie's droid not necessarily having full memory at this point. So,
Oh,
all right, so Techie.
Yeah. Alright, I am named, by my designation is KGT-012. I am a, basically a refurbished V1 battle droid back from the once in the old days of the Trade Federation, but now I'm just a droid out on his own trying to survive, or its own out trying to survive. And I was picked up by the Shadow Mech in the last job you guys went on. Just found me heavily damaged, but still in mostly working with my chassis. And with that, my memory also got damaged from the circumstances of me actually being there. So I got picked up and repaired, and since then I have now just served him as a comrade. So I now protect him until either he doesn't need me anymore, or if I find something more important, like the pirates that put me there in the first place.
Yeah, so your motivation is the comrade one, so like you're motivated to protect Nob, essentially.
That's basically it, yes.
And your obligation was...
How much should I say? Because I
it's
think it was
entirely up to you. Like, if it's something that you haven't necessarily revealed, like, obviously describe the type of obligation, but the details of it you can kind of withhold until they come.
the type of obligation is betrayal, and mainly just the ones who betrayed me put me in that position of me being heavily damaged and all my customized parts stripped off me. So hence why they've got like lots of welding marks on my chassis, like burn marks and things like that, of things that were getting forcibly removed, and lots of cutting damage. So yeah.
Cool. And you were, the bodyguard. Alright, cool. Awesome. Now we'll go back to Nob's obligation.
Okay,
I'm actually interested
my
here. What's going
obligation
on?
is I'm a criminal. I assume I'm going to be, well, at least my crime is going to be well known, basically.
I'm going to say, while it's not necessarily widely attributed to you, the particular crime is well known, yes.
Yes. I don't know if my character would tell anyone, but I'll just tell you guys as players rather than your actual characters.
Right, so player knowledge, not character knowledge.
Yes. Because I don't know why my character would tell anyone. But yes, one of my modified droids was involved in an assassination of a politician.
And I'm thinking that might be part of Techie's lost memory, if that's acceptable. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I'm just thinking that might be a hilarious thing.
Well, I was a bodyguard. I'm also still a hired gun, so I took any job that I can. So,
but I mean, it could be more along the lines of that while you were with that previous group, that was something that you committed without necessarily realizing that the Shadow Man was someone who would give you modifications in the past, perhaps. So this isn't the first time you've encountered each other, but you might not realize it necessarily.
Well, he probably would have noticed me because
he would have
my
noticed you, yeah.
my actual sort of chassis color in that is actually quite unique in comparison to other droids if they have seen them in the past. Like I'm actually more of a charcoal color of like overall on the chassis with royal blue trims on the breastplate as well as on the antennae. So I more or less stand out in comparison to other droids. I'm not just the standard beige.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so that's all your characters basically ready to go. They're all set up. That'll all be saved. I can go in and access those. Everything looked perfectly fine except Nob, I'll get you at some point to go through your skills and just put a little tick under which ones are your career skills. So that we've got track of those for later on, because they're cheaper to purchase ranks in later on. Otherwise,
Go through that now.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Will I listen?
Can you not hear this? Basically, I started the Star Wars theme in Roll20.
Oh, right. I'm using. I've got Roll20 on the tablet and I've got Skype on my phone. So.
Yeah, basically started playing the main theme. Cool. So I guess next session we'll start with the actual narrative. Did you want the opening crawl now, or do you want it then?
I'll do it then.
Probably then, because it's almost midnight for me now, so I'd rather get going now.
Cool beans. Well, I've got an opening set of encounters sorted and ready to go, depending upon what you choose to do. Did you guys want to have a group name rather than just your ship name?
One bit nights.
Like, do you want to just operate as the crew of the Sunseeker, or do you want to have
I'd say
an
just
infamous
the crew.
group name?
I think just the crew would probably work. We might make a name for ourselves later.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's like, basically, we're just a crew of a ship at the moment. But then, as we gain reputation, we probably might get a nickname for us, either established by the locals or ones that we gave ourselves based on our deeds.
Okay, I'm happy with that. That works.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool beans. Any other questions at this point about how we're going to run these things?
How often are we doing this? Is it weekly, fortnightly?
Fortnightly, as far as I'm aware, because I think most of the rest of you guys still have Pathfinder, is it? Or?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. So
Yeah, just every other Monday. So yeah.
Okay. Cool.
We may or may need to take a week off while some of us are in Japan, unless we manage to get that running while we're in Japan. That would be interesting. But we'll cross that.
Yeah, I think that might be a little bit overly difficult, given Wi-Fi problems and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool beans. And then obviously depending on Christmas and New Year's, etc., we may need to work around that, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah, I think, one of the days in there is a public holiday, I think.
Yeah, it's Christmas Day.
Christmas Day is a Monday, so obviously we'll be skipping that one.
Boo.
Which would happen to be one of the days we'd fall on. But we can arrange that for some other point during the week, I suppose, because we'll all likely have a couple of days off during that time that we can possibly arrange for. But okay, so if we set the next one nominally at the stage for Monday, the 11th of December.
Sounds good.
Okay, just for say we're gonna miss the 8th while we're in.
It's the 8th of January.
Japan, but the 22nd, the fortnight after that, I don't get home until 8:30
and I don't
in the morning or something. So
that one might also be a miss potentially. But we can possibly reschedule.
We might go to Tuesday or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So depending on how we go.
Yeah, as long as I get enough warning, I should be fine to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So before we leave for Japan, we'll organise what date the next one will be on. So.
That's cool. Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty much free any night, so whenever.
Now, I am intending this to be a relatively long-form campaign, if that's acceptable for you guys, or did you want a shorter one?
Good with that.
Good.
Long's good. Cool.
What we might, as we get down the road, we will do Apocalypse World Season 2. But what we can do is we can just pick another night for that.
Yeah, or we can take breaks from this depending on sort of how we're progressing with it.
Yeah.
They're really just doing it in sort of seasonal format, so we switch between seasons as it happens. So it's kind of My Kitchen Rules.
God, don't start. Also, in terms of how I intend to GM this, because this is the first time I've done things, I am open to people providing alternative interpretations of things, or deciding they would like to argue for different interpretations or outcomes of things. So if you think you should get more boost die for whatever reason, say so. I'll make a ruling on it, but have a reason for it.
GM for
Just
that.
because.
And try and keep your characters relatively consistent. Like, obviously you can do anything you want. I'm not going to be prescriptive, but I will tend to reward actions that are a bit more consistent with both your character and the game world. So.
Most of me. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So freeze.
Go my programming
flying into
demands.
the sun, let's say once. You get one attempt to fly into the sun. After that, never again.
Opening action.
We find the intrepid crew of the Sunseeker aimed towards the twin suns of Tatooine.
Well, we're living up to our name at least, I guess.
Yeah.
So much for the long campaign.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the dream sequence.
I just had the thought. If Freeze wants to fly into the sun, we should call the ship the Icarus.
Ooh. But then Icarus doesn't necessarily exist in Star Wars. So.
Close enough.
Remember
Anyway.
guys, that there are 2 escape pods on this ship. 2.
So
How
we
many do they
shove
hold?
Freeze in one and
They're
launch
like-
him towards the sun, and then we just like
Oh, nice.
piss off and do our own thing.
Nice, nice.
Well, one's in the cockpit, so
Behind the cockpit, but yeah. So you get that one, and everyone else gets the other one. Alrighty, cool. I think we will leave it there because some people are starting to tire, I believe. So.
Yeah.
It's midnight now, so yeah, I
What
gotta
do you want about?
go.
It's only 9 o'clock. Stupid daylight savings time.
Stop living in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, let's stop recording.